Welcome to Movie Speeching. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take good care. Day of Reckoning is the name of the movie. Please like and subscribe to get every update. At a suburban power plant, employees were celebrating a colleague's birthday when they suddenly saw something strange on the security camera. There was a shadow moving in the well and a worker went to check when he was suddenly attacked by a mysterious monster. The guy tries to go back to the office, but a bunch of monsters chase him and start killing everyone in the building. As the eclipse obscured the sun, creatures began appearing across the planet, killing millions and destroying cities. The news called it Judgment Day because soldiers were sent to fight these monsters in a war that lasted the entire eclipse. Millions of lives and tons of resources were lost in the war, but eventually all living things were destroyed and humanity began to rebuild. They designed protective facilities called gates in case the creatures one day decide to return. 15 years passed and the world returned to normal life. Dave works as a janitor for a company with a low salary even when he has to go down to the pit to handle dead animals. At the local school, Laura works as a teacher and befriends fellow teacher Milton, who always dates her. Laura divorced Dave a long time ago and is still dealing with some issues, but today she finally accepted Milton's invitation. Meanwhile, her son Tyler meets his girlfriend Maddie, who is worried about the upcoming solar eclipse. Tyler tells him there's nothing to worry about because there have been many eclipses in the past 15 years and nothing has happened. Meanwhile, Officer Garrett is called by staff at one of the gates, asking him to come because they have confirmed major seismic activity and containment has been approved. When Garrett reached the door, he had a feeling this wasn't a drill. He checked all the systems, only one electrical box exploded, causing them to lose all their lives. In town, Dave picks up Tyler from Laura's house, and while he plays video games his parents end up arguing. It turns out that Laura was pregnant with Tyler during the last disaster and Dave wasn't there for her, and she still hasn't forgiven him. Tyler interrupted them and left with his father. Late at midnight, Dave received a call from Uncle Ted, who was sure that a new Judgment Day would take place tomorrow and invited Dave to take his family to a shelter before the eclipse began. Tyler watched the news and was worried when he saw millions of dead fish appearing on the beaches. This is one of the signs observed 15 years ago. At that moment, the first monster appeared at the door, quietly sneaking up the stairs. At the same time, Laura called Dave to tell him that she had seen the news and wanted Tyler to come home because Milton had booked a place to stay. Dave wants Tyler to stay with him and an argument occurs in which Tyler receives a text message that causes him to secretly leave the house. When Dave finally went looking for her, he only found a piece of paper with Maddie's number in his room. Milton continued to urge Laura because the shelter was full so they had to get there early. When Laura explains that Tyler has disappeared, Milton uses the boy's phone number to track his location with special software and finds him at the skate park. It turns out Tyler is there with Maddie, who is very worried and scared because her parents are gone. Tyler promises that he is nothing like her father and will never leave her alone. Suddenly, a loud cry was heard and huge flocks of birds appeared in the sky, which was another sign of judgment. Everyone in the park fled in panic and soon the streets were filled with families trying to leave the city. Dave finds himself stuck in a giant traffic jam, but when he sees birds flying by, he leaves the car and continues his search on foot. At the door, workers were checking the system when they heard a strange noise. A monster suddenly appeared and started attacking one of the men. Garrett ran away while the other soldiers opened fire, but it seemed the normal bullets did no harm to the beast. Moments later, Dave finally reunites with Tyler and Maddie just before emergency sirens begin to sound throughout the city. Luckily, Laura shows up with Milton and they take the three of them to Milton's car. There was about an hour left until the eclipse and the city was in complete chaos. For those trying to escape, all roads were jammed. The family is trapped for a while and sees cultists circling the cars, scaring the drivers with painted faces, and they believe the end of the world is coming. When Milton finally saw an opening, he drove as fast as he could and took his family to a shelter. Unfortunately, it was also chaotic here, with many people begging for a place inside while the military said that only women and children were allowed in. Dave tells Tyler to go with Laura and Maddie into the shelter, but after entering, Tyler regrets it and goes back to his father and says he will never leave him. The women followed him and at that moment, the notice board announced that the shelter was full. The group rushes out to the car while discussing options. Dave wants to go to Ted's hideout in the desert while Milton suggests hiding at the school since it's closer and has a basement. They quickly find themselves stuck in traffic again, so they have to get out of the car when an earthquake hits the area and the solar eclipse begins. As the world plunges into darkness, monsters begin to find ways to attack. They immediately took control of the city and began killing mercilessly, as had happened 15 years before. Dave insists they should leave town and wants to drive, but Milton is angry because it's his car and he knows how to save people. An argument ensues and punches are thrown, but the fight breaks up when a flying monster swoops down and takes Milton away. While Laura screamed, Dave pushed her into the car and he got behind the wheel to get his family family out of town. As they walked along the canal, they discussed theories about the monster's origins, wondering if they were sent by God. Finally, the car started running out of gas and Dave wanted to find a replacement. He parked next to a pile of abandoned cars and began checking inside and discovered there were bodies inside. When he finally finds an empty car, he goes inside, only to have the driver hiding in the back seat pull him out as he reveals that there is a monster nearby. He continued to look around the vehicles for other victims, and as he passed the two men, fortunately he did not see them and continued on his way. Then the monster found one of the bodies and started eating it, so very carefully and silently, Dave started driving back toward Laura and the kids. Now the two cars are next to each other, so Laura and the children try to get from one car to the other. They were very quiet about it, but the monster still noticed them and chased them. The old man got out of the cart and sprinkled salt on the beast, but that only caused the monster to stop for a moment before rushing at the man and starting to eat him. The family takes advantage of this distraction to eventually leave the scene, following an abandoned road in the mountains while monsters flock from all directions toward the town. They finally reach Ted's hideout, an actual concrete bunker. The doors were closed and there were cameras on the roof, but no one came out when the family started screaming and banging on the door, begging to be let in. What they don't know is that Ted is sitting in front of the computer, watching them through a camera while someone points a gun at his head. At this moment, a group of monsters appeared on the mountain and began rushing towards the shelter. As the family panicked, Dave grabbed a tire iron to protect his loved ones, but the hatch finally opened and they rushed inside. The family meets Ted and his wife Stella, but they are also surprised to find Garrett. Apparently his father was a war buddy of Ted's and he had been separated from his unit, so he came here to ask for help. Dave noticed Garrett had a gun, which made him suspicious. Afterwards, the group shares a meal, but they can't help but notice on the screen how the monsters try to break down the door, making everyone worried. Using the radio was useless because all they heard was screaming. Maddie asks how monsters sense them, and Garrett explains that they respond to light and heat, but he wonders if they see human souls. He also tells how he survived the first Judgment Day. At that time in the year, he was working in an oil refinery, and when monsters flocked there, he was dive into a salt mud pond. He buried himself and had to listen to monsters kill all his colleagues and friends. While Garrett is distracted by his account, Ted signals Dave to retrieve and hide a knife, unaware that outside, a centipede-like monster is crawling through a small hole in the window screen. Garrett then announced that he would be on duty first, so Ted invited the others to stay and play cards instead of sleeping, looking at Dave meaningfully. However, Garrett noticed the gesture and pulled his gun out of its holster, forcing Dave to put the knife down as he explained that Ted was against allowing him to stay. It was Stella who took pity on him. He had survived once and was determined to survive again at any cost. Suddenly, Tyler lunged at Garrett trying to get the gun, but Garrett pushed him away. An argument ensues, but Maddie interrupts by pointing out that they can't hear the monster anymore. Then, the centipede-like monster jumped down from the wall and bit Stella. While Ted tears the creature from his wife's neck and pours salt on it, Dave punches Garrett, snatches his gun, and tries to shoot the creature. The little monster dodged every bullet, but Maddie killed it with a knife. They then tie up Garrett and try to stop Stella's bleeding, but they will need proper medical attention. At that moment, they noticed on the screen that a giant monster was constantly banging on the front door, trying to break in. Dave says they should leave, but Ted doesn't want to go out, saying his wife wouldn't be able to survive outside. Stella wants him to go there and reminds him of the underground passage leading to the mountains. Garrett says he has a car full of tanks and can get people to their door, and the group isn't sure if he believes him until Garrett points out that helping them will be beneficial for him. They decide to leave, but first Ted reveals that he has the entire arsenal and everyone arms themselves. As the group enters the tunnel, Dave opens the front door and shoots the first monster that passes by before joining the others. Once the tunnel is safely closed, they exit and notice Stella is having trouble walking because she is also starting to transform into a beast. Later, they were walking down a road when Tyler saw a monster right there. The monster appears to be dead, so Maddie tries to touch it, but Tyler stops her. When she turned around, a long tentacle emerged from a hole in the ground and grabbed her leg in an attempt to pull her away. As Maddie screams violently, Tyler and Dave hold her back and Laura pulls on the tentacle so it can recover. Once Maddie is free, the group flees and Garrett convinces Dave to untie him so he can help in case of another attack. What the others don't know is that Dave is hiding the wound on his arm. Sometime later, they reached the top of the mountain and found the town on fire. When they found Garrett's car, they were disappointed to learn that it wouldn't start. Just then, monsters appear on top of the mountain and start rushing towards them, so Garrett tries to restart the engine while Stella takes Ted's gun to end things before she finishes transforming. Ted immediately fights her until he gets his gun back and begs her to get in the car, but Dave knows there is no hope and takes Ted back. Stella waited for the monsters to arrive and they quickly ate her. Garrett finally gets the car started and the group escapes, leaving the monsters behind. On the way, they picked up radio signals and heard that almost all shelters could not withstand the attack and were destroyed. Finally, they arrived at the gate, but no one answered the radio, not to mention the gate was still open. The group cautiously made their way inside and discovered that there was no electricity, so Garrett and Dave decided to fix it while the others went to get the first aid kit as they discovered Ted had a back injury. The others head to Ted while Dave restores power, and Garrett explains that the gate has been prepared for a second invasion and tons of salt water has been pumped out, but the hole is too deep. When the power is restored, Dave and Garrett start to head back, but suddenly Garrett feels blood running down his hand and looks up at the same time to find a body. Something in the darkness roars. The duo rush to the group to discuss their options as there are 2 hours left before the eclipse ends, and Garrett suggests hiding in a chemical warehouse as its doors are explosion-proof. As they leave the infirmary, a transformed human attacks Garrett, who fights alongside Dave to deal with it. They defeated the monster, but the noise they made attracted the attention of more monsters. Terrified, Garrett quickly ran through a door and closed it behind him, leaving everyone behind. He then injects himself with a drug to begin fighting against the transformation. Dave took the family into another room and noticed there were scatter lines, meaning the tank was on the other side of the wall. This gave him the idea for a plan. It will channel salt water through the tank's pipes to ward off monsters. Before leaving, Laura kisses him. At that moment, the door was broken and the whole family ran away. Dave goes through the ventilation system and notices a monster eating its prey in the room. When he reached the tank, he tried to keep quiet as he opened the faucet and water began to pour into the tanks. Dave then backed away, but the monsters sensed him and began to chase him, grabbing his leg. When Dave fights back, he sprays him with salt, causing the monster to crumble into dust. Meanwhile, the others find themselves surrounded by monsters and Tyler opens fire on them. Suddenly, Dave's voice comes over the speakers, telling them to activate the fire alarm. The monsters are getting closer, so Ted tells Tyler to protect his family before attacking the monsters with an axe, but several beasts rush at him at once and quickly kill him. Tyler continues to shoot only to run out of bullets, so he activates the fire alarm, dropping salt water on the monsters, causing them to crumble into dust as they scream in pain. At that moment, the eclipse ended and all monsters began to return to their kingdom through the gate, causing another earthquake. Laura and the children also try to move, but encounter Garrett, who is losing his mind due to the transformation. He shoots Tyler and hits them in the shoulder, but before he can shoot again, Dave appears behind him and hits Garrett in the head with a fire extinguisher. As Dave reunites with his family, a giant monster emerges from below and lunges at Garrett, swallowing him whole. The family ran into the medical facility and prepared a salt mixture in a cylinder, which they threw at the monster as soon as it broke through the door, killing it instantly. The family then goes out and discovers that the world has been completely destroyed, but now they are ready to start rebuilding. Thank you for watching. See you on the next video.